Hi everyone. So I'm out again today, but I will be back tomorrow on campus and then on class on Thursday. So I'm going to get these two lessons in about 15 minutes if I can. This is the only amount of time I get per video. So the first one is on browser capabilities and the second one is on designing for accessibility. I'm coming from the module 2 in CSS page in Haiku. So lesson 5, browser capabilities. We'll skip 6 and go into 7, designing for accessibility. So browser capabilities, talked about this before where certain websites work differently on different internet browsers. So I have open Chrome and Firefox, and I'll just go ahead and open up an Edge browser here as well. Let's close all these. Don't need these. Okay, and then I'll open that web page up on this page. Just have it set up. So let's go back to lesson 5. So again, browsers are moving towards a constant implementation of HTML, but sometimes they differ in how they display the content and how well they adhere to the standards. As a web designer, it's your responsibility to make sure your page works for as many people as possible. And you can never know which browser they're on exactly, so you're going to have to make that, you have to take that into consideration when you're designing your web page. The easiest way to eliminate differences is to use a default style sheet. That way your page looks as standard as possible on different pages or on different web browsers. It does reset the values for the page, and what that does is sometimes it might make your page look worse, but again, it's going to give a more standard and more streamlined look across different browsers. I've mentioned this before, not all browsers support all tags. The same with CSS properties. Not all browsers support all CSS properties. But there's something called prefixes you can use to fix different unsupported CSS options. And I'll show you a few examples. So here are the prefixes for the different sites or the different web pages. You have WebKit, and that'll work on your Android internet browser, Chrome, iOS, and Safari. MOZ or Moz for Firefox. MS for Internet Explorer, and O for Opera. So what do these mean? First of all, not all CSS attributes work on all browsers. So some examples are column count, border radius, and gradient. And this site here, caniuse.com, will tell you on which sites they will work, which web pages they'll work and which they won't. And if they don't work, then you'll need these prefixes so they can work. So let's check out this site real quick, caniuse.com. And here are the most commonly searched CSS attributes. You have Flexbox, Calc, Transforms. But if I look up, there was that details tag we used a while ago. Details. And you go down here and you can see that it will work on Firefox, Chrome, Safari, Opera, Android browser, Chrome for Android. But it won't work on Internet Explorer and Edge. And what happens is it's not supported, but for Edge it says it's under consideration. What happens when you open it up on Internet Explorer or Edge is that, I probably should show you the details tag. You can toggle it open and close. In Edge, it'll just be open. So let's do one real quick. And let's look up HTML details. Alright. And let's throw in a details tag in here real quick. So close to the bottom of this page. Details summary. I'll just copy all this. Oops. Not all of that. Just this. Copy, paste, save, run, zoom in. So there's the copyright 1999 to 2014. Open, and you see the details. Close, and you don't see the details. If I go back and run this on Internet Explorer, let's see if I have that. Yeah, I do. And I scroll down. As you can see, you are already able to see the details of this tag. It's open, so in other words, it's not supported. That was an HTML tag. I know. We're talking about CSS here, so let's look at some examples of CSS attributes. One example is a transition, and right here is an example of a transition effect. So that's what it looks like. When I hover over, I'm not clicking or anything, I'm just hovering over, the button here grows in size, height and width, and it also changes color. The other thing that happens is the font size increases. All right. So this will work on Edge, but it won't work on Chrome versions 4.0 and before. 4.0 and after, you'll need the prefix WebKit. And I know some people don't update their browsers all the time, so there's a chance that some people are still using a version between 4.0 and 26. Same with Firefox. If they're using the version 4.0 between 4.0 and 16, you'll need to include that prefix Moz. And then this is for Safari, and this is for Opera, another commonly used web browser. This is what it looks like in your CSS. So I have this transition effect, right? So what it does, it changes the width in 2 seconds. So you will need this WebKit prefix so that it works on Safari, on those versions I mentioned before, 3.1 to 6.1. And then it changes to 300 pixels. So if we try it, hover over, the width increases from 100 from here to here, 300 pixels. Okay. So I'm about halfway. I should be done with this one real soon. So I showed you the example. There are automated ways to include prefixes. Right now you're adding them by hand, but there are some websites. There's some editors that do that for you. I'm not sure if Notepad++ does it. It's not the greatest. It is free, so it's limited to what it can and cannot do, but there are some editors that do that, and there's some outside websites that do that for you. Here's an example, autoprefixer.github.io. So it automatically loads up with an example, .example. And remember, this is a class selector. So anything with the class example is going to be styled with these attributes. And one is flex. Display flex, transition all, 0.5 seconds, none. And then so the WebKit that you need one for all of these, I think. Display, WebKit, MS is there. For the transition, you need a WebKit prefix, which is for Chrome. For user select, you need it for, looks like 3 of these, WebKit, Mozilla or Moz, and MS for Internet Explorer or Edge. And then for linear gradient, you need the WebKit prefix. All right. So as you can see, not all prefixes, or not all attributes need all prefixes. Display only needed these 2. User select needed the 3. Transition only needed 1, extra 1. Same with linear gradient, only needed that 1. So the way it works is you copy paste your CSS here, and it'll load up what you need and don't need here. So let me show you real quick. Let's copy some of this CSS. I'm not sure we've used any that need any prefixes, so we'll see. Paste. Yeah, I'm not too sure. Don't think we have, so we'll just move on for now. To summarize, you should use default style sheets. It removes differences. It makes it more standard. It might make it more boring, but it makes it more standard. And we're going to get to accessibility in the next lesson. And don't overuse prefixes. You want to try to keep your page as simple as possible, meaning all those transitions, things like flexbox, you probably want to avoid anyway. So using too many prefixes is not a good idea. And I'll try to zip through this one. It's a shorter lesson, and it's about accessibility. Not a lot of examples here, just kind of standards, guidelines, best practices you should use when you are designing. So remember to keep your content in your HTML. It's really tempting to add content via colors, images. When you do, you want to follow these guidelines. You follow POUR, P-O-U-R. POUR stands for perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So perceivable is not just perceivable to you and me, but for people of all abilities, and that includes people that are hard of seeing, hard of hearing, not able to use their fingers, hands, arms appropriately to move a mouse around, or even the fine motor skills they need to move their index finger to control their touchpad. So that's creating your website so that it's perceivable, using captions whenever you can, using transcripts for video or audio, so people that cannot see or hear, they can either read it or they can get a screen reader to read it for them. That includes alt text. Use the correct semantic markup. That means if you have a header, put in a header tag. If you're trying to quote something, use a quote tag so your screen reader reads that. And good color contrast, as you can see here, this is not the greatest. It's done intentionally, so you have a hard time seeing it. Use good color contrast, and I showed you the Wave website before. It tells you whether or not your web page has good color contrast. Operable, let's say I don't have a mouse. Does your website still function? If you tab through it, will it still work? Make sure users have control over timing and limits, starting and stopping videos, turning the volume up or down on audio. Don't cause seizures, flash content, and make it easier for people to navigate. You know, the common places to put a nav bar on the top of your web page or on the left. You know, it's really weird to have it I haven't seen it in the center very often or on the bottom. That's not where nav bars go. They go on the top like this here or on the left. These are some pictures of some accessibility tools, different types of keyboards, Braille keyboard, for people with different abilities to use. Understandable. Are you using correct language? Are you using correct syntax? If you want to bold it, put in a bold tag. Don't put in a heading tag just because you want it to stand out. If there are videos, illustrations, make sure that you use, if it requires use of Flash or Adobe Reader or whatever it is, you include the link to that software, the appropriate software. If you want a link to let's say this W3 Schools website, make sure it says W3 Schools and not link to, I don't know what, something else. I got 45 seconds. I'm going to finish this. And make them operate in predictable ways. If it's a link, again, if it's a link to W3 Schools, make sure that link goes to W3 Schools and not W4 Schools or I don't know, whatever other website there are out there. And avoid user mistakes. You know, if I want to click on this button, make sure it's big enough that I can click on it and I don't accidentally click on another one. And robust, does it work on different web pages? Does it work with different devices? I'm running out of time, so I'm just gonna end right here with the summary. Have a great day. I'll see you on Thursday.